And we're back. Okay. So a slight change of plan this week. Tom's been extradited to Egypt. So while Tom's having to fight his legal battles, I'm going to be joined by my little brother Sam. Now, Sam, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Sam. I'm Tom's little brother. Yeah.
That's fine. And now you're an old head, Sam, aren't you? You're not a big fan of trap, not a big fan of modern rap.
No, I don't really like modern music that much, to be honest.
No, you firmly believe that it was better in the 90s and in the 80s, and it's gotten worse now.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, with the majority, obviously there are some good songs that have come out recently. I can't name off any at the top of my head, but
that's all right.
Yeah.
But I'm just setting the scene because with Sam being here and me being able to talk to him, I thought, why don't we look at some 90s rap? You know, with Tom and I, we focus on stuff that's coming out now. We did the occasional classic review. This is another double classic review, and also kind of a why you should listen to, which is going to be replacing the underrated artists, because a fair amount of the time we're kind of pigeonholing ourselves into not being able to talk about people who are still good, who we want to talk about, who aren't necessarily underrated. So this is going to be like, I guess, why you should listen to 90s rap. Now, obviously, we can't cover the entire decade of rap, and so instead, what we're going to do is I'm going to review a West Coast album from 1990. Sam is going to be reviewing an East Coast album. They're two very good albums in their own right, both influential, and we hope you enjoy. Okay, so my album is America's Most Wanted by Ice Cube. It came out in 1990. It was Cube's first solo album. He released another album in 1990, and then he just released two other very good albums, Lethal Injection and Death Certificate, which have more of the traditional West Coast G-Funk sort of taste to them, because there's the whole West Coast East Coast thing. The rap and music from the 90s that came out of the East Coast was a bit darker and a bit more jazzy. Would you say, Sam? Or how would you like?
Yeah, I'd say like in the early 90s, coming from the 80s. The start was definitely a lot more jazzy. You know, you had like Tribe and the Far Side. You know, they were bringing that sort of jazzy scene, and then as it got later on in the 90s, you had the more hardcore stuff come out.
Mm-hmm. And so we could have chosen a ton of albums. I mean, there are tons of albums which you can always come back to in another classic review. But okay, I'm going to talk about America's Most Wanted now, and why, if you haven't listened to it, you should listen to it. Because really, if you like rap, you really, really should, especially if you like 90s rap, and if you like Ice Cube and NWA, because it's a tour de force in my opinion. It comes in hot with the opener after the initial kind of skit intro part, and Cube comes in hard with hard flows, funky beats, and some kind of interesting soundscapes, sampling NWA at times, and there's like some really, really good flows throughout the whole thing, and there's relentless rhymes. It's a really, really good piece. The sequencing on this album is really standout. It's the first time I really noticed it on an album. It was one of the first rap albums I bought, and listening to it, there's, at least for the first half, there's the first four songs just flow in from one to the other almost seamlessly. Then later further into the album, he brings in there's multiple skits, and one of the things which ties the album together is this kind of mock radio host who's I guess I don't know who the guy is, but he's pretty funny. He's constantly putting on, like, pretending to be a white guy, saying we're not gonna listen to this. We're not gonna listen to Ice Cube. It's just straight R&B, and like talking about Ice Cube and the lynch mob is dismisses it as just some black thing. It's pretty funny. It's fairly tongue in cheek the whole way through, and despite it, it's still like Ice Cube wears his heart on his sleeve and where he stands on the racial injustices of the time in the 90s, and it's really, really good. It's a really funny album at times. It's a really kind of aggressive album, and it's a fully unique album with some of the like best songs I've heard from him. I mean, I know he's had a fair, like, some really good hits, and he's renowned lyricist. And here, he really shines in writing his lyrics where, specifically when he's storytelling. That's something that really, really shines. There's at least 2 or 3 times when he'll go into a story from just some bars, or he'll the whole song will be telling a story. There's two of my favorite tracks on this album, and 2 of my favorite rap tracks of all time from this album are just 2 stories which he's telling, and I'm gonna get into them in a bit. It's this album's always a joy to listen to, and it has this kind of rebellious nature. The bars about hood life, the closing bar on America's Most Wanted, towards the end is he's talking about how he only started to get noticed by the cops who started robbing the white folks, and this very playful speed and tone, and it has one of the best lines to close a song, where he says every mother fricker, we're gonna censor it, I guess. Every mother fricker with a color is most wanted. It's really, really cool. There's also some really, really good beat switches, and it's a very layered album. There's far more to it. It's so musically dense, far more than I ever thought it was when I was listening to it when I was younger. And okay, so I'm gonna now tell you like my 4 favorite songs on this, in order to illustrate these points, and hopefully to get you to listen to it, because it's seriously, seriously good. Okay, so the first one is going to be the opener, and it begins with this really hard beat with which kind of seizes control over you, making you move. You can't help but move to it. It has a really smooth bass line at times, which comes in after the first kind of hook. There's these snippets of the like "Fuck the Police" by NWA, which is sampled at times, and then there's some really good funk guitar. Cube is really, really good in this. He goes in 100% and he keeps it up throughout the entire track, and like with the opening line. So this is the first album that he brought out after leaving NWA, and I guess there must have been beef there, but the first bar he starts off is, "I'm sick of being treated like a goddamn stepchild." It's so cool. He comes in hard and he keeps it up throughout the whole thing, and we're gonna America's Most Wanted is the next song, and it's also one of the second song which I think you should listen to about this. It's transitioned seamlessly from the song prior, and the beat keeps up this unrelenting tempo. It has this it's pretty gangster. There's some funny bars in this, particularly in it. It kind of outlines his it introduces the themes of racial tension, as well as it begins. It's the start of Cube's like rapping about kind of the hood shenanigans and stuff, saying things like I need to be in the Guinness book for things I took, and there's like some, I guess DJ warps. I don't really know what the word is. You know when they kind of scratch the record, Sam.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's still animated. It's not just like a beat has been set there for Cube to rap over. It seems like the DJ and the producer is still like there's still it's almost like it's being done live at times. It's really really fun. There's a great beat switch, and oh yeah, there's this other bar which is FBI on my dick, stay off. There's an excellent beat switch after this where there's some more hardcore lyrics, and he begins storytelling, talking about how he's in the when he starts robbing the white folks with this girl in the back seat, and then he gets sent into the penitentiary, and the storytelling is really, I feel, his strongest asset. He's able to really conjure up these powerful images, which can also be just really funny. Although it's a dark comedy, it's not. It's firmly tongue in cheek and it's satirical. That's what it is. It's really good. There's coming on to the kind of dark comedy and satire, as well as just kind of being a bit outrageous in what he's saying when he's telling the story, which he's telling really well, is the third song, "You Can't Fade Me," which is one of mine and Tom's personal favorite from his discography. It's completely outrageous. Have you heard this song, Sam?
No.
Okay, so Cube opens the track by saying like, "Give me an old school beat," and this really, really good dirty old school beat comes on. It's bouncy and it's like pretty damn cool. It's a standout beat, but what I have to say is that it kind of takes a backseat, despite it being one of the best beats on this project, to Ice Cube's storytelling on this. Like what he's saying is it's one long kind of desperate story loaded with gallows humor about how the neighborhood hussy, as he puts it, tells him that she's pregnant with his kid, and Ice Cube doesn't want to pay child support, and he can't let anyone else in the neighborhood find out that she's potentially pregnant with his kid because of the embarrassment. So he's at first like trying to find a way to run away from it, trying to find a way to make sure that she never has this kid. And then towards the end, he raps about the bar is like, "I drop her off and I'm knowing I'm gonna hang myself in the morning." It's pretty crazy. It's all done. You feel empathy for him. You feel sorry for him, or sympathy rather. But he's being a complete scumbag. But it is pretty damn funny. There's essentially, yeah. So the way he refers to this girl and having known her is he calls her a girl I know from my homies in Parlor, and well, she's trying to fade him, I guess. But so he's gonna do anything, whatever it takes to stop the baby. He raps about he rhymes something with like looking in the closet for a hanger. There's this great part where he just goes like, "We dodged, duck, run, dive, dove, hid," and it's kind of, he plays over this really bouncy beat with these very bouncy flows throughout the whole thing, and he's able to keep you constantly engaged with the story, and you can see it playing out, as bad as it may be, and it's very funny, and it is kind of satisfying at the end when he finds out that it's his neighbor and it's not him. Yeah, it's just pretty damn funny with this catchy hook, which has this kind of chorus of women singing this kind of Motown thing over it, which is pretty funny. It's just a great track, to be honest. And then the final song, really stands out to me on this track is a bit further in. It's called A Gangster's Fairy Tale. Have you heard this one, Sam?
No, I haven't. No.
Oh, it's great. The whole premise of it is it's just Ice Cube retelling a bunch of fairy tales to this kid on a corner, but with this gangster hood spin on them. So it again has this very bouncy beat which begins by sampling like a kid song, a nursery rhyme, and there's all these fairy tale characters which are reimagined as people in the hood in like Compton. So for instance, Cinderella is a prostitute. There's a lyric about Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall, smoking a blunt, drinking some 8 Ball, and the little old woman who lived in a shoe sold dope at the front, out the back marijuana grew. It's so funny. It's so funny. It stood out to me the first time I heard it, and I've listened to it easily like dozens of times. It is so funny, and yeah, there's it seems like it's just a really fun song, and Ice Cube's able to have fun while he's rapping over it, and it's really it's good, man. It's just absolutely great. And one thing I want to note is that with this being kind of the West Coast album, it doesn't have the G-funk elements of like Dre's production with all those keys, which are kind of almost psychedelic. One could say it instead has these very hard, fast beats which have like funky elements, jazzy elements, and it has this very unrelenting tempo, as I said, and yeah, it's just an absolute joy to listen to, and yeah,
I think that's like it's because American Most Wanted came out in like the early 90s, didn't it?
yeah.
Like I feel like that's because and then like I say G-Funk came out in maybe the mid to late 90s. You know, like I feel like from the 80s rap was starting to, you know, in the 80s it was a lot harder, it was a lot more gritty, but you still had that sort of jazzy kind of funky because that's where it came from. It came from jazz, soul and funk and things like that. So I feel like it took until maybe the mid to late 90s for G-Funk and like the proper, you know, the sound of, you know, what you think of West Coast rap. I feel like it took a bit of time to develop. So from the early 90s, you know, New York and I mean East Coast and West Coast rap wasn't really too different because they were, you know, only just developing their sounds from the 80s.
Yeah.
I feel like that's why it could be like that.
Yeah. But it's a pretty damn great album. And there's just one part to do with the like Cube's attitude towards the racial tensions. There's the way this song Endangered Species starts is with this news reporter saying that young black males are now the oldest and newest or oldest and youngest species on the endangered species list. Police say that they are hunting them because they're good game, and it goes into this almost like it goes into this really really hardcore beat, and that's another great song. But I don't want to take up too much time talking about it. But yeah, it's a solid album through and through, and of all the albums of his that I've listened to, I think it's his best one, if I'm being honest. And okay, I'll hand it over to you, Sam.
All right. Well, I'll be talking about 36 Chambers, or Enter the Wu-Tang, 36 Chambers by Wu-Tang Clan. It came out in '93, and I think it represents the hardness and the grittiness of like New York in that time, and the way that, you know, like where the members of Wu-Tang came from. There's none of them, so in the songs you get just so much energy coming in, and all of them with all their different styles. Like you have Old Dirty Bastard with this kind of offbeat, kind of wacky style, and then you have Method Man with this more chilled out. You know, you could say it was a little bit like G-Funk, and you know, the sort of, you know, it's different. And then you have I can't really remember. Oh, Ghostface Killer. He's got a proper hard, like raw kind of voice. It's kind of fast paced, and you know, you just have all these different sounds in these really hard, like raw beats.
Yeah, and they all sound like they're different characters.
Yeah. They're very you know, like you get some groups nowadays and everyone sounds the same, and like you don't really but like in Wu-Tang, everyone's different. Yeah, it's like so they're
Yeah.
different characters, and people have made them up, and they've all got their different attributes. And
Yeah.
yeah. A little bit of context from it. You know, it came up in New York in the slums.
Sons
they
of
came
Shaolin,
from,
isn't it? That's what they call it. Yeah.
in Cream, one of the songs, like probably Wu-Tang's most famous song, Cream,
Yeah.
talks about the slums of Shaolin, and Shaolin was a nickname for this place in New York, and the slums, you know, just being the ghetto, if you will, and talks about coming up from there and like the drug use that was going on, and like because in Cream they talk about how they were smoking woolies since 16, and a woolly is a mixture like a joint with crack in it, and
Right.
you know, it's a bit of a shock when you hear that you're like at 16, you know, they're smoking crack, but then it gives you the realness of, you know, what it was like in that time. And like you were saying, how in America's Most Wanted, Ice Cube is storytelling. He's telling you a story, and when you can really get like sort of hypnotized, you get sucked into it. And there are a couple songs in 36 Chambers like Cream and something like Tears. Like Tears is a song
Tears
about
is my favorite song.
Yeah, it's a great song. It talks about how like why do the good ones have to die, and why is that? But it's like the storytelling of it, the element of how you can just listen to it, and it's like they were right next to you, speaking it to you, and then because the equipment they used probably in the studio wasn't the best at the time, when you listen to it, it just sounds gritty and it sounds you know, a little bit forced together, but everything of it is just like it creates an atmosphere. The whole album just, I feel like it symbolizes the atmosphere that was in New York at that time, the time they were growing up. You know, it's just so real. None of it's fake. There's none of this, you know, like trying to be something we're not. That's how it was. That's how they were.
Yeah.
And
how would you kind of sum up that kind of East Coast sound?
I'd say it was a lot more like the 80s. You know, how it was just, you had a drum beat. You had, you know, you took a sample from a song, you created the break, and then you just, you know, revert back to that, and then you rap over that, and it's quite simple. But then the way, because RZA, I think he was the main producer of the album. When you listen to the songs, it's so like, it sounds so simple on the outside, but when you properly listen, there's so many different instruments going on. Like he uses so many offbeat, or not offbeat, just alternative like piano sounds in the background, and there's like
definitely.
I'm pretty sure in one of the songs is like a kazoo type instrument. It sounds like an offbeat, like an off it sounds like a strange saxophone coming out of nowhere. That's in
that's in the
Seventh Chain.
The final song, right?
Final song of the album. And I just love the way that he had the, you know, the confidence just to chuck in loads and loads of different instruments, and they all work so well together. And like in like some of the songs, it takes you on a journey, like because like in Kareem there'll be like he takes out little bits of instrument, like keeps the bass of you know, the drum and the bass in the song. And, like keeps that basic skeleton, but adds and takes away instruments, and then as the different rappers in the group, as they would say their verse, it's like it's a different little flavor, like putting in different spices in the cooking or something. It's really interesting the way they do that and the way it all works, and it's just so good. And the way they like, as we were saying at the start, how they each have their own like specialities about them. It just So what songs for an atmosphere.
And so what were the songs that you'd chosen?
Cream, well, that was one of them because it was the most famous, and it's the most famous for a reason. It is one of their best songs. It's such a raw, just real reflection of what it was like, and like it's just the way that like the beats in it, you can just sit there and just nod your head to it. It just makes you nod your head, and you can just listen, and it puts you in a trance, and you can go on from that. And I really think because the whole album was said to be one of the most influential rap albums, and you can really see how that's done that. Like at the start, it came out, it came out in '93, which is the same time as you had like Tribe and Souls of Infinity and the Far Side. They're all bringing out their albums, and they're all quite jazzy, like upbeat artists.
Yeah,
and then,
no, I totally get that. And and Wu-Tang is a lot more gritty, and it's
Yeah.
somewhere, I'd say it's somewhere kind of in between Mobb Deep and Tribe.
Yeah. And that's the
Yeah.
thing. Like it was like a sort of stepping stone to go from the '80s or the early '90s. We had the Far Side and Tribe. They're quite happy, and then it stepped from Wu-Tang into Mobb Deep and Big L, who are a lot more gritty or
Yeah,
Biggie or someone who gives you it's a lot more gangster. That's how
yeah.
the stereotypical '90s rapper is a lot different to the stereotypical '80s. You got Fresh Prince in the '80s, and then you got Tupac in the '90s. They're different people.
Okay.
But like like the sound of how it changed. Like Tupac, he said like gangster rap is like, if you had people knocking on the door and there's food inside, at the start it's going to be nice and, can we come in please? And that's like the '70s, it was quite happy, but it was still real, like you had the message, that song. But and then in the '80s, they're starting to get a little bit more, not aggressive, but a little bit louder. So you got like Eric B and Rakim, with their harder hitting beats, and then in the '90s, it's like everyone's like, oh, look, just let us in now. We're just gonna smack down this door, and that's how you had, the much more aggressive like gangster music, the gangster rap that came out in the '90s. And I think, like it's a good reflection of that and how rap changed. And then nowadays, it's different now. It's changed, isn't
it? Yeah. It's a whole different beast now. And talking of like now, well, there was a single that did drop recently, which has been making a fair amount of waves. By, I don't know, you might have heard of it, Sam. It's called Old Town Road by
I've
Lil Nas X and Billy Ray Cyrus.
heard it around,
Yeah.
just lurking around underneath.
What were your thoughts on it?
I mean, I thought it's not my kind of music. I can appreciate it. Like I find it quite comical.
Yeah,
definitely. Like other people do. It's a fun track.
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of works, like, with the country sound and the trap beat. It's
very strange how it brings together these two very, very different worlds. I was a big fan of how this kind of bouncy bass contrasted the almost lo-fi guitar plucking.
Yeah.
And then like one of the bars was like, riding in a tractor, lean little in my bladder. It's so funny. And Lil Nas X is just kind of slurring through the whole thing, pronouncing like any word with an R in it with this very hard R kind of sound, I guess Southern.
It sounds like it's Alabama or Texas. Or
yeah, it's I don't think it's anything more than just very kind of well produced, dumb fun, but it's pretty fun,
Yeah.
I think as much as we've been talking about kind of more influential music, which is dense and has great depth and actually wants to say something, I think it also, music, and especially like rap as a genre, has every right to just exist for the sake of existing and be fun as well with songs like this. And I honestly think it's not that bad. It's pretty funny. He did drop another single on Wednesday, I think. On the 10th, I'm pretty sure. That's a much harder trap song. But I didn't want to review it. Instead, I'm just gonna mention "CHopstix" by ScHoolboy Q. So Num Num Juice came out not so long ago. Now has come out "CHopstix," which is featuring Travis Scott rather heavily. It's very different to Num Num Juice. It's not kind of how hard that track was. It's more kind of subdued with, I guess, a nicer aesthetic to it. It's very nice to listen to, but it's not as special as Num Num Juice. If I were just to go over it very, very briefly, I'm sure that if Tom and I have the time once he's back, from Egypt with no more legal battles. We'll go into it in more detail. But okay, this has been I guess a shorter episode, but it's still 30 minutes, you know. Okay, I've been Tim actually rather, and Sam has been Sam, and we do
Yes.
hope you've enjoyed. Okay,
Yes.